get what we want. Hey! It's about that time!
We know what we want to do. It's another opportunity for us to get better.
Alabama has won the match.
How you compete. That means how hard you play, how tough you play, how you can sustain in tough circumstances.
Welcome to Tide TV This Week, brought to you by Renaissance Bank. I'm Chris Freeland alongside Maggie Hetzel.
I mean, incredible game, incredible crowd. Yes, it was a loss, but, you know, taking a lot from it, and amazing game.
Yes, it was, Maggie. It was Battle of the Century Round 2 in Bryant-Denny on Saturday night, and it was an electric atmosphere for the matchup. ESPN College Game Day was in town, as well as SEC Nation, and President Trump was on hand to see the battle between the #1 team in the Associated Press poll and the #1 team and the coaches poll. Alabama got the ball first and marched right down the field, looking to score on 3rd and goal at the 8. Tua takes off to run and somehow loses the ball, and LSU recovers it. The Tigers drove right down the field and scored from 33 yards out to go up 7-0. With a score 10-0 LSU, Jalen Waddle provided the spark for the Tide. A blatant face mask was missed, but it actually seemed to spin Waddle to the left, and then his speed took over. Waddle turned the corner and headed down the sideline. With the help of some key blocks down the field, Waddle takes it all the way for the score, 77 yards, and 15 seconds later, it's a 3-point game at 10-7.
And to start the second quarter, the Tigers answer. Joe Burrow finds a wide-open Terrence Marshall for the score. The 29-yard score puts LSU ahead 16-7. But then on the extra point, what's his name? Xavier McKinney. He breaks through the line untouched and blocks the extra point to keep it at a 9-point LSU game. Then a couple of drives later, the Crimson Tide used another big play to get back in the game. Devontae Smith, he runs right past the LSU defender. Tua throws it perfect in stride. He takes it all the way in, 64 yards. Then a missed extra point made it a 3-point game, 16-13. Then LSU answered with a 45-yard field goal to make it 19-13, and then made it 26-13 on this 1-yard touchdown run by Clyde Edwards-Helaire, trying to make something happen before the half. Tua, he's picked off by LSU's Patrick Queen, which you'll see right here. And then the Tigers made the Tide pay. Edwards-Helaire scores again, this time through the air. The 13-yard pass from Burrow gave LSU a 20-point lead at the half, 33-13.
Up by 20, LSU got the ball first and the second half, but the Alabama defense stepped up, holding LSU scoreless for the entire third quarter. On 2nd and 10, Xavier McKinney sacked Burrow, causing him to fumble, and the ball was recovered by Terrell Lewis. After stopping LSU again on the following drive, the Alabama offense got back on the scoreboard after several big plays. Tua found Najee Harris. Harris leaped and made the grab as he fell into the end zone for the score. The 10-play, 95-yard drive cut LSU's lead to 13 at 33-20. After another stop by the Alabama defense, the Crimson Tide got on the board again. On 4th and 1 at the LSU 13, Coach Saban elected to go for it, and it paid off. Harris rushed for 12 yards for the first down. 2 plays later, Harris scored again. This time running it from 1 yard out. It's a ball game now. The Tide down just 6 at 33-27.
LSU answered with a long drive of their own. A 12-play, 75 drive was capped off by that Edwards-Helaire touchdown. LSU went for 2, but the pass was well defended by the Crimson Tide. No good. Tigers are up by 12, 39-27. The fourth quarter was back and forth, where a touchdown was scored on every possession until the final possession of the game. The Crimson Tide used another long drive to score. This 14-play drive was capped off by that 5-yard score to Jerry Jeudy. Tua found Jerry in the end zone, and then it's a 5-point game, 39-34. LSU answered right back. Edwards-Helaire again with the score. LSU back up by double digits, 46-34.
With just 1:37 left on the clock, down by 12, the Crimson Tide needed just one play to score, and Devontae Smith got it. He blew right past the LSU defender, 85 yards, and just like that, it's back to a 5-point game at 46-41. Alabama needing the onside kick to get the ball back with just 1:21 remaining. Bulovas executed the kick beautifully, but got the bounce. But Justin Jefferson was there to recover it. Down 20 at the half, the Crimson Tide fought back, but that first half deficit proved to be just a little too much to overcome as LSU hangs on to win by 5, 46-41.
Have to give LSU a lot of credit. I think they really played well in the game. They made plays when they had to make plays on offense, and they're a very, very good team. Great crowd, great atmosphere. Thank our fans for the support that they give us, and The bottom line is, especially in the first half, we didn't play very well. We don't want to waste a failure. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from the things that we did and didn't do today. I think that everybody's got to make a commitment to finish the season the right way. We don't really control our own destiny, but if we finish the season the right way, we can see, where it takes us.
Playing in his first game since undergoing surgery on his ankle, Tua finished with over 400 yards passing. He had 418 on the night with 4 touchdowns and 1 interception. Najee Harris had a big game on the ground for the Tide. Harris had 146 yards and a touchdown to go along with 3 receptions for 44 yards and another score. And Devontae Smith had a huge night for the Tide. Smith totaled 213 receiving yards on 7 catches, with 2 of those being long touchdowns.
Defensive back Xavier McKinney, he had a big game for the Tide. McKinney had a game-high 13 tackles, including 9 of those being solo. McKinney also had 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, forced fumble, and a block extra point. Jared Maiden added 11 tackles. Trayvon Diggs had 10. Anthony Jennings finished with 8 and 2 tackles for loss and 2 sacks.
With Minnesota defeating number 4 Penn State, there was more movement than just between Alabama and LSU in the top 5 of the college football playoff rankings this week. The question was, how far would the Tide fall? As expected, with a win over then number 3 Alabama, LSU is the new number 1 this week. Last week's number 1 Ohio State drops to number 2. Clemson moves up to number 3. Despite the loss to unranked South Carolina, Georgia jumps up to number 4, with Alabama taking the 5th spot. One-loss Oregon is right behind the Tide at 6. 2 other SEC teams are in the committee's rankings. Florida is 11th and Auburn is at 12.
And over in the Associated Press poll, LSU is number 1 with 54 of the 62 first-place votes. The media has Alabama at number 4, with Georgia at 5. Florida is 11th, and then Auburn is 13th.
And in the coaches poll, LSU is number 1 there as well, with 55 of the 64 first-place votes. The coaches have Alabama at number 4 as well, with Georgia behind them at 5. Florida is at 12, and Auburn is 13th. Now, we still have 3 weeks left in the regular season, plus the conference championship game, so don't get too worked up about the rankings just yet. As we've seen in the past, Maggie, a lot can happen between now and those conference championship games.
So there is hope that the Tide can still jump in that number 4, 3, 2, who knows, college football playoff spot. And this weekend, the Crimson Tides travel to Starkville to take on the Mississippi State Bulldogs. When we come back, we'll have a preview of that SEC West matchup.
Tide TV this week is brought to you by ATI. Built by Bama. Rebuilt by ATI Physical Therapy. Ford and the F-150. Tough runs in our family. See your local Ford dealer today. AFS, a Bayless company. Your foundation and waterproofing specialists, serving you since 2000.
Alabama and Mississippi State will meet for the 104th time in series history on Saturday in Starkville. Alabama's played more games against Mississippi State than any other school. The Crimson Tide leads the all-time series 83-17 and has won 11 in a row over the Bulldogs. Alabama won last year's matchup against Mississippi State 24-0 in Tuscaloosa. But the last time the Tide visited Starkville, it took a 26-yard touchdown pass from Jalen Hurst to Devontae Smith with 25 seconds left to give the Crimson Tide the 31-24 win. This season, Mississippi State enters the matchup 4-5 and 2-4 in the SEC. In Week 3, Mississippi State entered the fourth quarter leading against now number 24 Kansas State, the same team that handed Oklahoma their only loss of the season. The Bulldogs were ahead 24-17, but 2 Kansas State fourth-quarter touchdowns gave the Wildcats the 31-24 win. Garrett Schrader leads the Bulldogs in passing with 1,022 yards and 7 touchdowns on the season, but it's Tommy Stevens that got the call in the Bulldogs' last game against Arkansas. Stevens completed 12 of 18 for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns as the Bulldogs set school records with 640 total offensive yards and 460 rushing yards.
I don't really think that I see a lot of difference in what they do, whichever quarterback plays. I think they're both very capable guys. They're both big guys, and they have running ability, and they're both good passers.
The bell cow for Mississippi State's offense is running back Kylan Hill. Hill leads the SEC in rushing at over 114 yards per game and is also second in rushing touchdowns with 9.
It's a touchdown, and it's Hill again.
The big play threat at receiver for Mississippi State is Osiris Mitchell. The 6'5" junior wideout has 5 touchdown catches of 20-plus yards on the season. As far as playoff possibilities and where Alabama will be in the postseason, none of that concerns Coach Saban.
Look, the number one thing that I'm concerned about, just so everybody gets it, is how we complete the season. I don't want to talk about anything other than the game that we have this week. We have kind of a legacy around here that we've only had one team in the last 12 years that's lost more than one game in the regular season. I'd like for this team to be able to continue that, and we certainly want to focus on all the things that we need to do to try to be able to get that done, and the number one thing is to play well this week against Mississippi State.
Alabama has lost back-to-back games only once in the last decade. In wins following a loss, the Crimson Tide's average margin of victory is 23 points. Kickoff is going to be an early one in Starkville. It's set for 11 o'clock on ESPN. Stay with us. We'll have more Tide TV This Week coming up next.
Tide TV This Week is brought to you by ATI. Built by Bama. Rebuilt by ATI Physical Therapy. The University of Alabama, where legends are made.
This season, we're going to be bringing you all of the all-access coverage of Nate Oates' first season as head coach of the Alabama men's basketball team in a series called Max Effort. You can watch the entire episode and future episodes of Max Effort on Alabama men's basketball social media channels, as well as YouTube and RollTide.com. Let's go all-access with the Alabama men's basketball team for a sneak peek of the first episode of Max Effort. It's brought to you by ATI.
Can you hear me? It's Scott Van Pelt. How are you?
Yeah, I can hear you. I've arrived. I'm on the Scott Van Pelt show.
It's really not. You arrived because you beat Arizona, and I was just talking to Jay about your
contested.
32 wins right now.
Norfolk State, number 32, has beaten number 1.
What's up? How are you? So good. Thank you. Nate Oates. Linda Leone.
Nice to meet you. We're so excited about your hire and bringing your family and your girls.
Coach, how are you doing?
Good to see you. All right. Congratulations, Coach.
We said if we were going to leave there, it had to be something special. University of Alabama's really special.
Davidson.
Institution, the tradition, the excellence. I mean, it's a national brand. Talk about max effort, that's everything. That's every workout, every weight room session, every practice. Our guys are going to give max effort. Continuous growth is one. Play hard. Like take a charge. Dive on the floor for a loose ball. And then we talk about selfless love. We're going to teach our guys, young men, how to love each other, love this community, treat each other well, fill the stands up with people that are excited to watch Alabama basketball. So I can't wait to get started. Roll Tide.
All right, tell me a little bit about the team retreat in Sylacauga.
The retreat. Oh my God. It was interesting. We first started out doing bear crawls, and then we got in the pool with our clothes on, and then we did sit-ups in the water, like going under the water. Somebody messed up or something like that, then we had to all lay on our backs and do flutter kicks and get sprayed with a hose. And that was like the first thing we did, so we kind of like, okay, let me see how this gonna go.
The only time I've been sprayed in the face with water is when I was a little kid running through little water things that you put on the grass, but not like he was spraying us.
Got the toes pointed straight.
What was it like having your coaches doing all that stuff with you?
Oh, that was even better because all the stuff that they say we don't need to do, you heard it from them, so it made you realize that they are human too.
Ready!
Hoorah, Instructor G.
Hey, get your whip license, baby. I've been there. Still is. Hey, I think you're in neutral.
I trust. Unwavering trust. Talked about it earlier. Unwavering trust.
You're gonna want the regular four-wheel drive. Unless we're going up a hill, you'll have to.
Do I trust him?
Driving.
He ain't got no choice but to trust me. You know what I do trust? What about us? Safety first, always.
There we have some snake in. You gotta be very careful out here. These things get yay high, this wide, and these things are very dangerous.
If you can push more out of yourself, you bring it up from the deep. And a lot of times you gotta dig deep.
So we really like that. Yeah, we finna do more. That ain't nothing, but we really like it.
All right, how you feeling?
I can run some more.
We're walking around with camos and our light vests on. I've never done that in my life, right? It's something we don't do, but we're here and we're doing it. But we're also going to come together in unity and be unified. Why is it important that this group is unified? Not just players and coaches. Why do we need to trust each other?
We got one common goal.
Say it again.
We got one common goal.
Which is?
Win championship.
Yeah, and do you think we can get there if we're disunified? No. And not only 5 guys on the floor, it is the entire staff. It's the entire group, right? We need to be unified.
All right, let's get after it today. Here we go. Hard work on 3. 1, 2, 3. Hard work.
Welcome back to Tide TV This Week, brought to you by Renaissance Bank. The Alabama men's basketball team looked to rebound from their season opening loss to Penn as the Tide took on Florida Atlantic this past Monday night in Coleman Coliseum.
Alabama jumped out to a 21-11 lead early on before Florida Atlantic used a 7-0 run to cut the Tide's lead to just 3 at 21-18 with a little over 8 minutes to go in the first half. The Crimson Tide then used an 18-2 run in the final 4 minutes of the first half to take a commanding 43-25 lead over Florida Atlantic at the break.
Javian Davis started the second half strong, scoring 7 of Alabama's first 9 points to increase the Tide lead to 20 at 52-32. The Owls countered with a 10-3 run of their own, but once again the Tide responded. A 16-4 run gave Alabama a 24-point lead at 71-47 with just under 5 minutes to play. The Crimson Tide led by as many as 25 points as the Tide rolled to a 78-59 victory for the first win of the Nate Oates era at Alabama.
It's a team that went in and beat Illinois last year, went in and beat UCF on the road, and then played Miami really tough. That's a good quality team, and I thought our guys played really hard, and the effort kind of trumped any of the mistakes that we made. I thought our effort on the glass, our effort on defense was a lot better. And, and we stepped up and made free throws too. That's always big to help the offense out when you can step up to the free throw line and knock down some free throws.
4 Crimson Tide players scored in double figures. Javian Davis led the way with 19 as he also led the Tide in rebounds with 9. Jaden Shackelford added 17, while Kyra Lewis had 16 and a team-high 3 steals. Alex Reese was the other Tide player scoring in double figures as he added 12 points and 8 rebounds.
And the Alabama women's basketball team, they hit the road on Tuesday as the Tide traveled to South Carolina to take on Clemson. The Crimson Tide got off to a slow start, trailing 12-6 after the first period, but the Tide turned on the Jets in the second. Alabama outscored Clemson 26-12 in the second 10 minutes of action to take the 32-24 lead at the half.
Alabama led by as many as 15 in the third period before Clemson used a 11-5 run to close out that third period, but the Tide still held a 49-40 lead. Alabama started the fourth period with a 9-1 run to extend its lead to 17 with just over 7 minutes to play. From there, the Tide led by double digits the entire way as Bama rolled over Clemson 67-54.
Sierra Johnson came up big off the bench for the Crimson Tide. She led Alabama with 21 points on 7 of 10 from the floor with 8 rebounds and 6 steals. Jasmine Walker scored 11 of her 13 points in the second half with Araya Copeland adding 10 and 7 rebounds. Christie's Curry squad will return to action on Sunday as the Tide hosts Mercer on Sunday at 2 p.m.
Stay with us. We'll have our plays and players of the week coming up next.
Goes back to the 23. Wow. I don't know how Waddle got away from that. Jalen Waddle. Touchdown. Wow, Tua Tagovailoa going deep on his first throw to Smith. Devontae Smith. Touchdown. Alabama.
On Shackelford, left corner, his 3 up. It's in.
Those are our BBVA top plays of the week. Now let's take a look at our players of the week brought to you by Payless Drugs. And this week we go with 3 Crimson Tide players. Devontae Smith had 2 big touchdowns for the Crimson Tide, one for 64 yards and another for 85. Smith totaled 213 receiving yards on 7 catches to go along with those 2 touchdowns. Smith is second in the SEC with 103 receiving yards per game and leads the conference with 11 touchdown receptions on the year.
Najee Harris had a big game with a rushing and receiving touchdown. Harris totaled 146 yards rushing on just 19 attempts for 7.7 yards per carry and added 3 receptions for 44 yards.
And Xavier McKinney was all over the field for the Alabama defense. McKinney had a game-high 13 tackles to go along with career best in sacks with 2 and tackles for loss at 2.5. If that wasn't enough, he added a forced fumble and a blocked extra punt. Now let's take a look at next week's schedule for the Crimson Tide. What's next is brought to you by Renaissance Bank.
On Tuesday, men's basketball returns home to Coleman Coliseum to host Furman at 7. The Alabama women's basketball team will be in Mobile on Thursday, and the women will take on South Alabama at 7.
On Friday, the swimming and diving team will be in Atlanta as the Tide spends the weekend competing in the Georgia Tech Invitational. Also on Friday, volleyball travels to Knoxville to take on Tennessee at 5:30.
And on Saturday, football has their final home game of the season as the Tide hosts Western Carolina at 11 a.m. for Senior Day, and cross country competes in the NCAA Championships in Terre Haute, Indiana.
And on Sunday, volleyball hosts LSU at 1, while the women's basketball team will be in New Orleans. The women will take on Tulane at 4. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of Tide TV This Week.
Have a great week, everybody. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
This has been a presentation of Learfield IMG College.